Imagine spending 4 years perfecting the art of avoiding someone who lives just 3 blocks away from you. 4 years of taking different routes to work, shopping at inconvenient hours, and declining invitations to parties where you know they'll be. Then imagine discovering that this person you've been so carefully avoiding has been doing the exact same thing, taking the same detours, making the same excuses, both of you dancing around each other in an elaborate choreography of missed connections. What happens when that dance finally stops? What happens when you realize that the person you've been running from might be the exact person you've been running toward all along? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, turning the streets of Millbrook into rivers of gray water that reflected the October sky like broken mirrors. Sophia Chen stood at the window of her second-floor apartment, watching droplets race down the glass while her tea grew cold in her hands. She was supposed to be getting ready for work, supposed to be gathering her lesson plans and grading papers for another day teaching 4th grade at Millbrook Elementary. Instead, she found herself frozen at the window, staring down at the intersection of Pine and Maple, waiting for something she couldn't name. At 26, Sophia had developed a reputation as the reliable one, the steady teacher who never missed a day, never caused drama, never disrupted the careful equilibrium of small-town life. Her students adored her patient explanations and creative projects. Parents trusted her with their children's education. The principal counted on her to handle difficult situations with grace and professionalism. Everyone in Millbrook knew Sophia Chen as the sweet, dependable teacher who lived alone in the apartment above Murphy's hardware store and spent her weekends at the library or tending to the small garden behind the building. What they didn't know was that for the past 4 years, every decision Sophia made, every route she took, every social invitation she accepted or declined, was influenced by one person. One person she had been systematically avoiding with the dedication of someone conducting a scientific experiment. His name was David Reeves, and he was the reason Sophia shopped for groceries at 7 in the morning instead of after work like a normal person. He was why she took the long way to school every day, adding 15 minutes to her commute to avoid walking past the veterinary clinic where he worked. He was why she had turned down countless invitations to community events, birthday parties, and casual gatherings, always with polite excuses that sounded reasonable but were really just elaborate ways of ensuring she wouldn't have to see him. The irony was that David Reeves probably didn't even remember her. They had dated for 6 months during her senior year of college, a relationship that had felt earth-shattering to 22-year-old Sophia, but had likely been just another college romance to him. She had been completely, embarrassingly in love with him, the kind of love that made her write his name in the margins of her notebooks and plan their future together during boring lectures. When he had ended things a week before graduation, explaining gently that he wasn't ready for anything serious, that he needed to focus on getting into veterinary school, Sophia had smiled and nodded and told him she understood completely. She had lied, of course. She hadn't understood at all. She had been devastated, heartbroken in the way that only comes from losing your first real love, the person you had genuinely believed you would spend your life with. But she had been too proud to let him see how deeply his rejection had affected her, too afraid of seeming pathetic or desperate. So she had maintained her composure through their final conversation, through graduation, through the summer before she moved back to Millbrook to begin her teaching career. What she hadn't expected was to discover that David had also moved to Millbrook, taking a position at the town's only veterinary clinic, just 3 months after she had settled into her apartment and her new job. The first time she had spotted him across the street, loading supplies into his truck outside the clinic, Sophia had felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. All the careful emotional work she had done to get over him, all the progress she had made in building a new life, suddenly felt fragile and insufficient. That had been 4 years ago, and in all that time, Sophia had managed to avoid having a single conversation with David Reeves. She had become an expert at spotting his dark blue pickup truck from blocks away, at timing her errands to avoid his schedule, at making polite excuses whenever mutual acquaintances mentioned his name. It had become second nature, this elaborate avoidance, woven so seamlessly into her daily routine that she barely thought about it anymore. Except on mornings like this, when the rain kept her trapped at her window, and she found herself wondering what would happen if she simply stopped running. What would happen if she walked into Murphy's hardware store downstairs and bought something she didn't need, just to have an excuse to linger on the street? What would happen if she took the direct route to school and let fate decide whether their paths would cross? The thought made her stomach clench with anxiety. 4 years was a long time to avoid someone in a town the size of Millbrook. If they met now, what would she say? How would she explain the careful distance she had maintained? Would he have even noticed her absence from his life, or had she been conducting this elaborate dance entirely by herself? Sophia forced herself away from the window and began gathering her things for work. She had grading to finish, lessons to teach, a parent conference scheduled for lunch. There was no time for standing at windows and contemplating the past. She pulled on her raincoat, grabbed her bag, and headed for the door, automatically calculating the route that would take her to school without passing the veterinary clinic. The elementary school was a cheerful building despite the gray morning, its brick walls decorated with student artwork and motivational posters. Sophia's classroom was on the first floor, with large windows that looked out onto the playground and the oak tree, where she often took her students for outdoor reading time when the weather was nice. She had decorated the space with warm colors and comfortable reading corners, creating an environment where even the most reluctant learners felt safe to try new things. Her fourth-grade students were just settling into their seats when Sophia noticed the commotion outside her classroom window. A small crowd had gathered near the flagpole, and she could see Principal Martinez talking animatedly with someone whose back was turned toward the building. As Sophia watched, the person turned slightly, and her heart stopped. David Reeves was standing in the school courtyard, wearing a rain jacket and holding what appeared to be a small animal carrier. Even from a distance, Sophia could see that he looked exactly the same as he had 4 years ago, tall and lean with dark hair that never quite stayed where he wanted it to. He was gesturing towards something on the ground, clearly explaining something to Principal Martinez, who was nodding and looking concerned. "Miss Chen?" one of her students called. "What's happening outside?" Sophia forced herself to turn away from the window. "I'm not sure, Emma. Let's focus on our morning work for now." But concentrating proved impossible. Throughout the morning, Sophia found herself glancing toward the window, trying to catch glimpses of whatever situation was unfolding in the courtyard. Her students, picking up on her distraction, kept asking questions about the activity outside, questions she couldn't answer because she was too afraid to look closely enough to understand what was happening. It wasn't until lunch that she learned the full story. Principal Martinez appeared in her classroom doorway just as Sophia was settling down with a sandwich and a stack of papers to grade. "Sophia, do you have a minute?" Principal Martinez asked. "I wanted to talk to you about something." "Of course," Sophia replied, setting aside her lunch. "Is everything okay?" "Well, we have a bit of a situation," Principal Martinez began, settling into one of the small student chairs across from Sophia's desk. "This morning, we discovered that a family of feral cats has taken up residence under the portable classroom. The mother cat had kittens sometime in the past few days, and they're all in pretty rough shape." Sophia felt her heart sink as she began to understand where this conversation was heading. "I called Dr. Reeves from the veterinary clinic," Principal Martinez continued. "He came out this morning to assess the situation. The good news is that the kittens are healthy, just young, and scared. The challenging news is that they need to be socialized if we have any hope of finding them homes." "Socialized?" Sophia asked, though she suspected she already knew what that meant. "They need to be around people regularly, handled gently, taught to trust humans," Principal Martinez explained. "Dr. Reeves says it's crucial that this happens soon, while they're still young enough to adapt. The problem is that the clinic is already overcrowded, and he doesn't have the space or time to provide the kind of intensive attention these kittens need." Sophia waited, knowing what was coming next. "He suggested that we might ask one of our teachers to foster them temporarily," Principal Martinez said carefully. "Someone patient and nurturing who could work with them during the socialization process. Sophia, I know this is a big ask, but you're the first person I thought of. You're so good with nervous children, so gentle and understanding. I think you'd be perfect for this." Sophia stared at her principal, her mind racing. Foster the kittens that David Reeves had rescued? Work with him on their care and socialization? It was like the universe was conspiring to end her 4-year streak of successful avoidance. "Okay. I don't know," Sophia said slowly. "I've never had pets before. I'm not sure I'd know what to do." "Dr. Reeves said he'd be happy to provide guidance," Principal Martinez replied. He'd check on them regularly. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Help with any medical needs, and teach you everything you need to know about kitten care. Really, you'd be doing the school and the community a huge favor. These little ones deserve a chance at good homes. Sophia felt trapped. How could she explain that she couldn't possibly foster these kittens because it would require regular contact with the veterinarian? How could she admit that she had been avoiding David Reeves for 4 years over a college relationship that probably meant nothing to him? "Can I think about it?" Sophia asked. "Of course," Principal Martinez said, standing up. "But I should mention that time is a factor. Dr. Reeves says the socialization window is pretty narrow. If we're going to do this, we need to start soon." After Principal Martinez left, Sophia sat in her empty classroom, staring at the stack of papers she was supposed to be grading. Outside her window, she could see the portable classroom where the kittens were presumably hiding, scared and vulnerable and in need of help. She thought about her students, how they would be excited to hear about the rescue cats, how they would want to help in any way they could. She thought about David, standing in the courtyard that morning, taking time out of his busy schedule to help animals that no one else wanted to deal with. It was exactly the kind of thing he would do, exactly the kind of person he had been in college. Kind, generous, always willing to help someone or something in need. Maybe that was why losing him had hurt so much. It hadn't just been about losing a boyfriend. It had been about losing someone she genuinely admired and respected, someone who made her want to be a better person. The afternoon passed in a blur of teaching and distraction. Sophia's students were curious about the morning's excitement, and she found herself telling them about the rescued kittens, watching their faces light up with interest and concern. Several students volunteered to help with kitten care, offering to bring supplies or assistance in any way they could. "Miss Chen," asked Jake, one of her more thoughtful students, "are you going to adopt them?" "I'm not sure yet," Sophia replied honestly. "Taking care of kittens is a big responsibility." "But you're really good at taking care of things," said Emma. "Look how well you take care of us." The innocent comment made Sophia's chest tighten with unexpected emotion. Her students trusted her, believed in her ability to nurture and protect. Maybe it was time to trust herself a little more too. By the time the final bell rang, Sophia had made her decision. She waited until the last student had been picked up, then walked to the main office to find Principal Martinez. "I'll do it," she said without preamble. "I'll foster the kittens." Principal Martinez smiled broadly. "That's wonderful, Sophia. Dr. Reeves will be so pleased." He left his contact information and said to call him whenever you're ready to discuss the details. Sophia took the slip of paper with David's phone number, her hands trembling slightly as she folded it and slipped it into her pocket. After 4 years of avoidance, she was about to voluntarily enter his orbit again. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. That evening, Sophia sat in her apartment with David's number in front of her, trying to work up the courage to make the call. She had rehearsed what she would say, practicing a casual, professional tone that would give no hint of their shared history. She would be friendly but distant, helpful but not overly familiar. She would prove to herself that she was mature enough to handle this situation without falling apart. The phone rang 3 times before he answered. "This is David." His voice was exactly the same, warm and slightly husky, with the hint of laughter that had always been there even during serious conversations. Sophia felt her carefully prepared script evaporate. "Hi," she said, then cleared her throat. "This is Sophia Chen, from the elementary school. Principal Martinez said you wanted to talk about the kittens." There was a pause, just long enough for Sophia to wonder if he recognized her name, if he was trying to place her in his memory. "Sophia," David said, and something in his tone made her heart skip. "Yes, of course. Thank you so much for agreeing to foster them. I know it's a big commitment." "It's no problem," Sophia replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I want to help." That's really generous of you," David said, and Sophia thought she heard something more than professional gratitude in his voice. "Would you like me to bring them by tomorrow evening? I can show you how to set up their space and go over the basics of kitten care." Tomorrow evening. In her apartment. With David Reeves. That would be great, Sophia heard herself saying. I'm at 247 Pine Street, apartment 2B, above Murphy's Hardware. I know where that is, David said quietly. Sophia, I have to ask, is this going to be weird for us? Working together, I mean. The question caught her off guard. So he did remember her, did remember their relationship and how it had ended. The realization was both relieving and nerve-wracking. Why would it be weird? Sophia asked, going for casual and probably missing by a mile. Because we used to. David began, then stopped. Never mind. I'm probably overthinking it. I'll see you tomorrow, around 7. 7 is perfect, Sophia replied. After they hung up, Sophia sat in her quiet apartment, staring at the phone and trying to process what had just happened. In the space of one phone call, her 4-year streak of avoidance had ended. Tomorrow evening, David Reeves would be in her home, and she would have to face whatever feelings or awkwardness or ancient history existed between them. The next day passed with agonizing slowness. Sophia found herself constantly checking the clock, alternating between anticipation and dread. She cleaned her apartment twice, changed her clothes 3 times, and made a grocery run to stock up on beverages and snacks she wasn't sure she would need. Her students were excited about the kitten fostering project, offering suggestions and asking when they might be able to visit the babies. Emma had brought a handmade Welcome Kittens sign, and Jake had contributed an essay about responsible pet ownership. Their enthusiasm was infectious, reminding Sophia why she had agreed to this arrangement in the first place. At exactly 7 o'clock, there was a knock at her door. Sophia took a deep breath, smoothed her sweater, and opened it to find David standing in the hallway, holding a large pet carrier and wearing an expression that was equal parts professional and uncertain. "Hi," he said simply. "Hi," Sophia replied, stepping back to let him in. 4 years collapsed into nothing as she looked at him. He was exactly the same but somehow different, more solid somehow, more settled. There were small lines around his eyes that hadn't been there in college, and his hair was shorter, more professional. But his smile was unchanged, warm and genuine, and slightly lopsided in the way that had once made her heart flutter. "So," David said, setting the carrier down carefully in her living room, "these are our little patients." Sophia knelt beside the carrier, peering through the mesh window at 3 tiny kittens huddled together in a soft blanket. They were gray and white, probably about 6 weeks old, with huge eyes and ears that seemed too big for their tiny heads. "They're beautiful," Sophia whispered. "They're scared," David replied, crouching beside her. The mother cat was hit by a car about a week ago. According to the neighbor who first spotted them, they've been on their own since then, hiding under the portable classroom and surviving on whatever they could find. The way he said her name, with warmth and confidence, made something flutter in her chest. She realized that she had missed this. Missed being around someone who knew her, who remembered who she used to be, before she became the careful, controlled person she was now. "I hope so," she replied. "I've never been responsible for anything this vulnerable before." "You teach 4th grade," David pointed out with a smile. "Trust me, you know how to take care of vulnerable creatures." They walked back to the living room, where David began packing up his supplies. The evening was ending, and Sophia felt an unexpected reluctance to see him go. For the first time in 4 years, they had been in the same space without drama or awkwardness, working together toward a common goal. It had felt natural, comfortable, almost like old times. "David," she said as he reached for his bag, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you recommend me for this? I mean, there must be other people in town who have experience with animals, people who would have been more obvious choices." David paused in his packing, considering her question. "Principal Martinez asked me to suggest someone patient and nurturing, someone who would be dedicated to the process even when it got difficult. Your name was the first one that came to mind." "Even though we," Sophia began, then stopped, not sure how to finish the sentence. "Even though we have history," David completed gently. "Sophia, that was a long time ago. We're both different people now, and honestly, I've always thought you were one of the kindest people I knew. That hasn't changed." The compliment made Sophia's cheeks warm. "Thank you. That means a lot." David shouldered his bag and headed toward the door, then paused with his hand on the doorknob. "Sophia, I know this might be strange, working together after all this time. If it becomes uncomfortable for you, if you'd rather I arrange for someone else to check on the kittens." "No," Sophia said quickly. "I want to do this. For them." David nodded, but something in his expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "I'll see you Thursday evening, then." "Same time?" "Thursday is perfect." After he left, Sophia found herself standing in her living room trying to process what had just happened. The evening had been surprisingly normal, almost easy. David had been professional and kind, with none of the awkwardness she had feared. If anything, he had seemed more mature than the college boyfriend she remembered, more confident in his own skin. But there had been moments, brief instances when their eyes met or when he said her name, when Sophia had felt echoes of the connection they had once shared. Moments when she wondered if he felt it too, or if she was imagining things that weren't there. The next morning, Sophia woke to the sound of tiny mewing coming from the spare bedroom. She found the 3 kittens awake and apparently hungry, peering at her, hopefully from their bed. Following David's instructions, she prepared formula and coaxed them to eat from the shallow dish, marveling at their tiny pink tongues and the determined way they attacked their breakfast. One kitten, slightly larger than the other 2, seemed less fearful than his siblings. He approached Sophia's hand without the cowering and hissing that the others displayed, and even allowed her to stroke his soft fur briefly before retreating to a safe distance. "You're going to be the easy one, aren't you?" Sophia murmured, making a mental note to tell David about his progress. Throughout the day, Sophia found herself checking on the kittens between lessons, watching their behavior, and noting small changes in their comfort level. Her students were fascinated by her reports of kitten care, and several offered to help with feeding or cleaning once the animals were more comfortable with humans. Thursday evening arrived with surprising quickness. Sophia had spent more time than usual choosing her outfit, telling herself it was because she wanted to look professional, not because she cared what David thought of her appearance. She had prepared a list of questions about kitten behavior and had organized her observations from the past 2 days. David arrived promptly at 7, carrying his medical bag and wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater that made his eyes look darker than she remembered. He greeted the kittens first, speaking to them in the same gentle voice Sophia had been using, assessing their progress with a practiced eye. "They look good," he said, watching the bold kitten approach his hand with more confidence than before. "How has their appetite been?" "Good, I think," Sophia replied, consulting her notes. "They've been eating regularly, and I've noticed them playing a little bit in the mornings." "Playing is a great sign," David said, looking pleased. "It means they're starting to feel secure in their environment." They spent the next hour working with the kittens, with David showing Sophia how to encourage positive interactions and recognize signs of stress or illness. The bold kitten, whom Sophia had privately named Courage, allowed both of them to pet him and even purred briefly when David scratched behind his ears. "He's going to make someone a wonderful pet," David observed. "He has the perfect temperament for a family with children." "What about the other 2? Sophia asked, watching the Shire kittens observe from a distance. "They'll come around," David assured her. "Some animals just need more time to learn to trust, but with patience and consistency, they'll get there." Sophia nodded, understanding that David wasn't just talking about kittens anymore. The conversation felt layered, full of meanings that neither of them was quite ready to address directly. After David finished his examination of the kittens, they found themselves sitting in Sophia's living room with cups of tea, discussing the animals' progress and the timeline for finding them homes. The conversation was comfortable, professional, but underneath it, Sophia sensed currents of unfinished business, things that had never been said or resolved. "David," she said eventually, setting down her teacup, "can I ask you something personal?" He looked up from his notes, his expression cautious but not unwelcoming. "Sure. Are you happy? I mean, with your life here in Millbrook, with your work?" The question seemed to surprise him. That's a big question. Why do you ask?" "I don't know," Sophia replied honestly. "I guess I just wondered if this is where you thought you'd end up. Small-town veterinarian wasn't exactly your plan in college." David was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "You're right, it wasn't my plan. I thought I'd end up in a big city practice, maybe specializing in exotic animals or working at a zoo. But when the position here opened up 4 years ago, it felt right. The community needed a vet, and I needed a place where I could make a real difference." And do you make a difference? I hope so, David said. I get to help animals every day, work with people who genuinely care about their pets, be part of a community where everyone knows everyone. It's not glamorous, but it's meaningful. Sophia nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Her own career path had been similar, choosing significance over prestige, connection over ambition. What about you? David asked. Are you happy teaching here? Most of the time, Sophia replied. I love my students, love seeing them discover new things about themselves and the world. But sometimes I wonder if I'm hiding. Hiding from what? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Sophia felt her heart racing as she realized she was on the verge of admitting something she had never acknowledged, even to herself. From taking risks, she said quietly. From putting myself out there, from the possibility of getting hurt again. David's expression grew serious. Sophia, is this about us? About what happened in college? She looked at him, this man she had loved and lost and spent 4 years avoiding, and felt the careful wall she had built around her heart begin to crack. Maybe, she admitted. I know it was a long time ago, and I know we were young, and it probably didn't mean to you what it meant to me, but... But what? David prompted gently. But losing you broke something in me, Sophia said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. I thought I was over it, thought I had moved on, but then you moved here, and I realized I hadn't moved on at all. I'd just become really good at running away. David stared at her, his expression unreadable. Sophia, you think that relationship didn't mean anything to me? I don't know what to think, she replied. You ended it so easily, so matter-of-factly. You said you weren't ready for anything serious, that you needed to focus on school. It felt like I was just a distraction, something you could walk away from without looking back. God, Sophia, David said, running his hands through his hair. I had no idea you felt that way. I thought you understood. Understood what? That I was terrified, David said simply. That I was 22 years old and completely in love with you and absolutely convinced that I was going to mess it up somehow. I thought if I tried to hold on to you while starting veterinary school, while figuring out my career, I would end up disappointing you or hurting you or not being enough for you. Sophia felt the world tilt slightly. You were in love with me. Of course I was in love with you, David replied, his voice rough with emotion. Sophia, you were the best thing that had ever happened to me. You were smart and kind and funny, and you believed in me in a way that no one ever had before. I broke up with you because I thought it was the noble thing to do. Because I thought you deserved better than a confused, broke veterinary student who didn't know what he was doing with his life. You never told me any of that, Sophia whispered. I was 22 and stupid, David replied. I thought I was protecting you, but really I was just protecting myself from the possibility of failure. They sat in silence for a moment, both processing this revelation, both realizing how much pain could have been avoided with better communication, with more honesty about their fears and feelings. I've regretted it every day since, David said quietly. Not just the breakup, but the way I handled it. The way I made you feel like you didn't matter to me. I've spent 4 years avoiding you, Sophia admitted. 4 years of taking different routes to work, shopping at weird hours, declining invitations to anything where you might be. I've been running from you because I was afraid of still having feelings for you. And do you? David asked. Still have feelings for me? Sophia looked at him, really looked at him, taking in his kind eyes and gentle expression, the way he had cared for the kittens, the way he had listened to her fears and confessions without judgment. Yes, she said simply, I do. David's smile was slow and wondering. I was hoping you might say that. You were? Sophia, do you think it's a coincidence that I recommended you for the kitten fostering? Do you think Principal Martinez came up with your name on her own? Sophia's eyes widened. You suggested me specifically? I've been trying to figure out how to talk to you for 4 years, David admitted. Every time I saw you across the street or at the grocery store, I wanted to approach you, but you always seemed to be in a hurry, always heading in the other direction. I started to think you were avoiding me deliberately." "I was avoiding you deliberately," Sophia said with a rueful laugh. "I know that now," David replied. "But at the time, I thought maybe you just didn't want anything to do with me. When the kitten situation came up, I saw it as a chance to spend time with you, to maybe figure out if there was still something between us worth exploring. So this was all a setup." "Not a setup exactly," David said carefully. "The kittens really do need fostering, and you really are the perfect person for the job. But I won't lie and say I didn't have ulterior motives." Sophia found herself smiling despite the serious nature of their conversation. "You orchestrated a kitten rescue to get close to me? Is that terrible?" David asked, looking uncertain. "It's actually kind of brilliant," Sophia replied. "And sweet. And exactly the kind of thing the David the first remember would do." "The David you remember was an idiot who let the best thing in his life slip away because he was too scared to fight for it," David said seriously. "I don't want to make that mistake again." "What are you saying?" David moved closer to her on the couch, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes, close enough that she could smell the faint scent of his cologne, mixed with the antiseptic smell that always clung to veterinarians. "I'm saying that I never stopped loving you, Sophia," he said quietly. "I'm saying that moving to this town, taking this job, it was all because I knew you were here, and I hoped maybe we could find our way back to each other somehow." "You moved here because of me?" Sophia asked, her heart pounding. "I moved here because of you," David confirmed. "And I've been waiting 4 years for the courage to tell you that." Sophia stared at him, processing this revelation. "All this time I thought you had forgotten about me, moved on, built a life that didn't include any thought of me. But you were thinking about me too. Every day," David said simply. "I've dated other people, tried to move on, but nobody ever compared to you. Nobody ever made me feel the way you did." "David," Sophia whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I know it's been a long time," David said, reaching for her hands. "I know we're different people now, and I know I hurt you before. But Sophia, I'd like a chance to prove that I'm not the same scared kid who walked away from you. I'd like a chance to show you what we could be together now, as adults who know what they want." Sophia looked down at their joined hands, marveling at how right it felt to have him touching her again. 4 years of careful avoidance, 4 years of building walls around her heart, and all it took was one honest conversation to bring it all crashing down. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared of getting hurt again, scared of letting myself hope for something that might not work out." "I'm scared too," David replied. "But I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life wondering what might have been if I didn't take this chance." Sophia met his eyes, seeing her own fears and hopes reflected back at her. "What would this look like? Us? Trying again?" "Slow," David said immediately. "We take our time, get to know each other as we are now, not as we were in college. We don't rush into anything, don't make assumptions about where this is heading. We just see what happens." Sophia nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and anticipation. "I think I'd like that." "Yeah?" David's smile was radiant, transforming his entire face in a way that reminded Sophia of all the reasons she had fallen for him in the first place. "Yeah," she confirmed, then surprised herself by leaning forward and kissing him gently. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question asked and answered. When they pulled apart, David rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing slightly, unsteadily. "I've missed you so much," he whispered. "I've missed you too," Sophia replied, and for the first time in 4 years, she allowed herself to fully feel the truth of that statement. The following weeks passed in a careful dance of rediscovery. David continued his regular visits to check on the kittens, but now their interactions extended beyond professional consultation. They would linger over cups of coffee, sharing stories about their lives over the past 4 years, comparing their experiences in veterinary school and teaching, laughing about the quirks and characters that made small-town life both challenging and rewarding. The kittens thrived under Sophia's patient care. Courage, as she had taken to calling the boldest of the 3, became increasingly social, purring when she picked him up and following her around the apartment like a tiny shadow. The other 2, whom she had named Hope and Grace, made slower but steady progress, gradually allowing brief pets and showing interest in the toys Sophia had bought for them. "They're going to make wonderful pets," David observed during one of his visits. watching Grace cautiously approach a feather toy. "You've done incredible work with them." "They did most of the work themselves," Sophia replied modestly. "I just provided a safe space and regular meals." "Don't underestimate what you've accomplished," David said seriously. "These kittens were completely feral 3 weeks ago. The fact that they're comfortable with human contact now is a testament to your patience and dedication." Sophia felt warmth spread through her chest at his praise. It had been a long time since someone had recognized her efforts with such genuine appreciation. Their first official date came almost a month after that evening of revelations. David asked her to dinner at the Italian restaurant on Main Street, the same place where they had celebrated her graduation from the education program back in college. Sophia wore a blue dress that brought out her eyes and spent longer than usual on her hair and makeup, feeling nervous and excited in equal measure. Dinner was wonderful. They talked about books they had read, movies they had enjoyed, dreams they still hoped to pursue. David told her about his plans to expand the veterinary clinic's services to include wildlife rehabilitation, while Sophia shared her ideas for developing a school garden where students could learn about science and nutrition through hands-on experience. "You should apply for that education grant," David encouraged when Sophia mentioned the funding opportunities she had been considering. "Your students would love a garden project, and you'd be amazing at implementing something like that." "I don't know," Sophia said, twisting her napkin nervously. "It's a competitive process, and I'm not sure my proposal would stand out." "Sophia, you're one of the most creative and dedicated teachers I know," David said firmly. "Any grant committee would be lucky to fund your project." His confidence in her abilities meant more than he probably realized. For so long, Sophia had played it safe, avoiding risks and challenges that might lead to disappointment. But David's belief in her made her want to be braver, to reach for things she might not have considered attempting on her own. After dinner, they walked through downtown Millbrook, past the shops and cafes that anchored their small community. The October air was crisp and clear, with stars visible above the modest skyline. David took her hand as they walked, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture that felt both familiar and new. "This is nice," Sophia said, squeezing his hand gently. "It is," David agreed. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and discover this is all a dream." "Not a dream," Sophia assured him. "Though I understand the feeling. Sometimes I can't believe we're here, actually talking to each other instead of running in opposite directions." "Number more running," David said, stopping beside the fountain in the town square and turning to face her. "I promise you, Sophia, whatever happens between us, I'm not going anywhere. We'll face whatever comes together, honestly and openly." Looking up at him in the soft light from the street lamps, Sophia felt something settle in her chest, a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. "I promise that too," she said. Their second kiss happened right there beside the fountain, deeper and more confident than their first, full of promise and possibility, and the sweet relief of finally being honest about their feelings. As autumn progressed into winter, Sophia and David fell into an easy rhythm of shared time and gentle exploration of their renewed relationship. They had dinner together twice a week, took long walks on weekend mornings, and gradually introduced each other to the lives they had built during their years apart. David met Sophia's colleagues at a faculty holiday party, charming everyone with his knowledge of child development and his genuine interest in educational methodology. Sophia attended the clinic's annual client appreciation event, watching with pride as David interacted with pet owners and their animals with equal warmth and professionalism. The kittens continued to progress beautifully. By December, all three were ready for adoption, having transformed from scared, feral babies into affectionate, playful companions. Finding homes for them proved easier than expected, with Courage going to a family with 2 young children who were thrilled to have a kitten who enjoyed being held and petted. Hope and Grace were adopted together by an elderly couple who appreciated their quieter, more reserved personalities. "I'm going to miss them," Sophia admitted as she and David cleaned out the spare bedroom after the last adoption was finalized. "They were lucky to have you," David replied, folding the blankets that had served as kitten bedding. "You gave them exactly what they needed to become the pets they were meant to be." "We gave them what they needed," Sophia corrected. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance and support." David looked up from the blankets, his expression tender. "We made a good team." We did, Sophia agreed, then took a deep breath. David, I need to tell you something. What is it? I applied for that education grant. The one for the school garden project. David's face lit up with excitement. Sophia, that's wonderful. When will you hear back? Next month, probably, Sophia replied, feeling a mixture of pride and anxiety about having finally taken the leap. I'm nervous about it, but I'm also excited. Even if I don't get the funding, I'm glad I tried. You're going to get it, David said confidently, moving closer to wrap his arms around her. And even if you don't, I'm proud of you for putting yourself out there. Standing in his embrace, surrounded by the evidence of their successful collaboration in caring for the kittens, Sophia felt overwhelmed by gratitude for the unexpected turns her life had taken. 6 months ago, she had been living a carefully controlled existence, avoiding risk and meaningful connection. Now she was applying for competitive grants, fostering rescue animals, and falling in love all over again with a man who saw the best in her even when she couldn't see it herself. I love you, she said suddenly, the words spilling out before she could second-guess them. David's arms tightened around her, and when she looked up, his eyes were bright with emotion. I love you too, Sophia, so much. This time, when he kissed her, it tasted like coming home. Spring arrived early in Millbrook, bringing with it news that Sophia's grant application had been approved. The school board was thrilled about the garden project, and her students were beside themselves with excitement about the prospect of growing their own vegetables and flowers. David volunteered to help with the initial soil preparation and garden design, bringing his knowledge of plant biology and his willingness to dig in the dirt on weekends. I can't believe this is really happening, Sophia said one Saturday morning as they marked out plots for different types of plants. 6 months ago, I never would have had the courage to apply for something like this. 6 months ago, you were hiding from possibilities, David replied, straightening up from measuring a row of future tomato plants. Now you're creating them. He was right, Sophia realized. The woman who had spent 4 years avoiding her past had been replaced by someone willing to invest in the future, willing to take risks for the sake of meaningful work and authentic relationships. The change hadn't happened overnight, but the cumulative effect was transformative. That evening, as they sat on Sophia's small balcony, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the sun set over their small town, David reached for her hand. Sophia, I have something I want to ask you, he said, his voice slightly nervous. What is it? She replied, though something in his tone made her heart skip. I've been thinking about our future together, about where we're heading, David began. I know we said we'd take things slow, and I don't want to rush you into anything you're not ready for, but... Sophia prompted gently. But I'd like to know if you'd consider moving in with me, David finished in a rush. Not immediately, not until you're comfortable with the idea, but sometime in the near future. I love the time we spend together, and I'd love to share more of our daily lives. Sophia looked at him, taking in his hopeful expression and slightly anxious posture. A year ago, the suggestion would have terrified her, would have sent her running back to the safety of her solitary routines. Now the idea of waking up beside David every morning, of building a truly shared life with him, felt like the most natural progression in the world. I'd like that, she said simply. I'd like that very much. David's smile was radiant. Really? You're sure? I'm sure, Sophia confirmed, then surprised herself by adding, Actually, I've been thinking the same thing. I love my little apartment, but I love being with you more. We could start slowly, David suggested. Maybe you could stay over more often. Bring some of your things to my place, see how it feels. Or, Sophia said, feeling bold and slightly reckless, I could just move in. We've been taking things slow for months now, David. I think we've earned the right to move forward. David stared at her, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. You want to move in with me? Just like that? Just like that, Sophia confirmed, then leaned over to kiss him. I'm tired of being careful, all the time. I'm tired of protecting myself from happiness. I love you, and I want to build a life with you, and I don't want to waste any more time being afraid. When they broke apart, David was looking at her with such wonder and adoration that Sophia felt her chest swell with emotion. "I love you so much," he whispered. "I love who you are now, and I love who you're becoming, and I can't wait to see where we go from here." "Wherever we go together," Sophia replied, and meant every word. 6 months later, Sophia stood in the school garden she had created, watching her students harvest the first vegetables of the season. Tomatoes and peppers, lettuce and herbs, all growing abundantly in the beds she and David had designed and planted together. The children were delighted with their crop, excitedly planning the salad they would make for lunch and the seeds they would save for next year's garden. "Miss Chen, look how big this tomato is," called Emma, holding up a perfect red specimen. "That's beautiful, Emma," Sophia replied, taking a photo to add to the garden journal they had been keeping all season. "You should be very proud of how well you've taken care of these plants." As her students continued their harvesting, Sophia noticed David approaching from the parking lot, carrying his veterinary bag and wearing the smile that still made her heart skip, even after a year of living together. "How's the harvest going?" he asked, joining her at the edge of the garden. "Perfectly," Sophia replied, leaning into his side as he wrapped an arm around her waist. "The kids are so excited about everything they've grown." "And how's the gardener doing?" David asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Happy," Sophia said simply. Really, truly happy. As they stood together watching her students celebrate their gardening success, Sophia marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment. A year and a half ago, she had been living a life defined by avoidance and fear, so concerned with protecting herself from potential hurt that she had closed herself off from potential joy as well. Now she was surrounded by the fruits of risks taken and chances embraced, standing beside the man she loved in the garden they had created together, watching children learn and grow under her guidance. "Thank you," she said suddenly, looking up at David. "For what?" "For the kittens," Sophia replied, "for finding a way to bring us back together, for being patient while I figured out how to stop running." David's smile was soft and understanding. "Thank you for letting me back into your life, for giving us another chance." "I love our second chance," Sophia said, then surprised herself by adding, "I hope we get many more chances together." "Are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" David asked, his voice carefully neutral but his eyes bright with hope. Sophia looked at him, this man who had helped her remember how to be brave, how to reach for happiness, instead of just avoiding pain. "I'm thinking that maybe it's time to stop calling this a second chance and start calling it forever." David's answering smile was brilliant as he pulled her closer, right there in the middle of the school garden with her students as witnesses. "I like the sound of forever," he murmured against her lips. "So do I," Sophia whispered back, and kissed him with all the joy and certainty and hard-won courage in her heart. As her students cheered and applauded around them, Sophia realized that sometimes the best adventures begin not with dramatic leaps into the unknown, but with the simple decision to stop running from the very thing your heart has been seeking all along. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.